Hey everyone, welcome to We Understood That Reference. Today's episode will be recapping some of the recent news coming out of Comic-Con at home and talking a bit about our experience with this first ever virtual Comic-Con. I'm Clayburn.
And I'm Nikhil.
So yeah, Comic-Con at home. What do you think?
Definitely a different experience than the real thing.
Nothing can compare to being in Hall H or, in that venue. But I think there were a lot of missed opportunities, and I think that the lack of support from a lot of the studios didn't help. So there really wasn't much. There was a lot of updates, but not as much as in a typical year.
Yeah, I was surprised by, it wasn't as star-studded as the real event would be. And that seems like something that there's no reason for that. Obviously, everyone's at home and it's virtual and you're going to miss out on the live aspect. But, there's no reason you can't still have all of these stars contributing and doing something. And really, there wasn't a lot of big names at any of these events, really. Just, maybe a handful of kind of the regular ones, the people that you would expect. But, Comic-Con, actual Comic-Con draws so many celebrities.
That's true. I'm starting to think that brands are looking at quarantine the wrong way. Instead of thinking if now is a time to cancel stuff and not communicate for fear of it being inappropriate, I think now is actually a great time to communicate because you have a captive audience, and I think a lot of people are A, starved for content, and B, they have time on their hands.
Especially something like this, like Comic-Con, it's it's perfect for creating content. People watch the live panels from Comic-Con, even years after the fact. People still go and watch their best moments from previous Comic-Cons that people had recorded. Mm-hmm. So it's these Q&As that they have with people on the panel, with actors and writers. So that's all still very popular today, and they did have that. They had several of those, but it didn't seem like on the same level as what the live show had in the past.
Yeah, that's true. There's nothing like Andrew Garfield asking a question and then taking off his mask, dressed as Spider-Man in the crowd.
Yeah. It is a disappointment. You don't get those great live moments, but I think there certainly would have been ways to work around that and to do some pretty cool stuff, especially given that a lot of this, I guess all of it really, was pre-recorded.
Yeah.
Which means you could have done some highly produced things as well.
That's a really good point.
For it. And really, and nothing was really highly produced that I saw. I mean, obviously they did drop some trailers and some things like that, and they did have some panels. I saw a couple comic-related panels from DC, for instance, and I think they did a pretty good job of editing in actual images from comics and things when they were discussing it, screenshots from movies, TV shows, that sort of thing. But that's very basic, they could have spent some time and really put some production effort into something, and then shown something really cool. But basically everyone was just at home on Zoom.
Yeah, that's true. And then when those videos aren't live, it kind of takes away from the event feel of it.
Yeah,
you can kind of fast forward through the boring parts, and it's not the same.
Yeah, especially if it is going to be pre-recorded. I think people would be more forgiving of the Zoom talking head format if it was happening live, right. And they could watch it. And then also there could be fan engagement. I was kind of disappointed that on YouTube, at least, they had comments disabled as well. So you couldn't even see what the community was talking about. You'd have to go to Twitter to follow the conversation. Uh-huh. I don't know if maybe it was handled better elsewhere, because that was the other thing, is I wasn't really sure exactly where the best place to watch all this was. I did see that IGN was doing something with it as well. But I watched them all just pretty much on YouTube. And, if you did a live stream on YouTube, you'd have the chat there that you could follow along. They could have, created their own kind of virtual lounge areas or something where people could come in and chat and do a live Q&A and that sort of thing. So I think they definitely missed out on a lot of opportunities there.
Yeah, that's true. It's a big missed opportunity, because the other thing is that there's a lot more people who want to engage with that kind of content besides the people who will pay the money to go to San Diego for the event. So now is kind of a great opportunity to kind of test a lot of different fan engagement methods and see what works, what didn't work. Whereas in kind of a very forgiving environment, in order to get more people involved beyond the people who actually attend.
And not to be, I guess, too much of a downer about it. What were some of the great moments or the good moments of the whole thing?
Yeah, I think there were some pretty cool announcements, and I think the biggest may have been the reveal of Superman's black suit for the Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League. I think that was kind of the big one of the big reveals.
Yeah, so the Justice League stuff was really the most groundbreaking news, you think, coming out of Comic-Con?
Yeah, I think so. And I think we're about to get a lot more, because I've heard that at DC Fandom, we're going to get a reveal on whether Zack Snyder's Justice League is going to be a movie or a miniseries. They're going to tell us that for sure. We're going to get a trailer. And I've heard that there's a rumor that Zack Snyder's Justice League is not the official title. And so if there's a new title, it will be revealed at DC Fandom.
Maybe it'll be Justice League : Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
They're going to have to redo the poster then.
Yeah. Oh, and I also heard that there's a rumor that there's going to be a black and white version of Justice League. So I don't know what kind of artistic direction this production's going in, but that's the rumor going around.
Yeah, so it sounds like we'll get a lot more information at the DC event coming up.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, so did you have any particular favorite panels during this one?
I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. Like, I just how about you? Did you have any?
Yeah, I mean there's some good ones that I tuned into. That I guess one great thing about it being kind of pre-recorded, I guess, is that all of this is up on YouTube, so I can catch up on the ones I missed. And obviously I didn't watch every single panel. And I probably won't watch all of them because there are some that I wasn't that interested in, but there were some that I wanted to watch and didn't get around to. Particularly, there was one about Aztec representation in media, and I thought that seemed pretty interesting because that's always just been a fascination of mine. The Native Americans who were here in the New World, were largely eradicated by disease and war, and so. It's interesting to me to think of, we know very little about those civilizations just in general. Like, we know that Mayans and the Aztecs were here and had very vast empires. But mostly we know that from, the accounts of the Spanish as they basically eradicated them. And so a lot of their own kind of surviving history and the things about them, we don't really know. So that's something that's just always been kind of interesting to me, because it's like these entire lost civilizations. And obviously, they've been depicted in media in various ways, probably some more accurate than not. But a lot of it is just, imagination, because we just don't know. We don't have that information. And that concept of lost civilizations is just very intriguing. There's also a panel for The Boys, and I did catch that one. I know you haven't seen it. I think I mentioned it a few times before here.
On Amazon.
It's a really great show. You got to watch it sometime. But they had the cast on there talking about The Boys and season 2 that's going to be coming out soon, and that they were also renewed already for season 3 as well. So this TV show is in for the long haul, it seems like, and it's really great. They did talk a bit about specifically for season 2 the kind of direction that they're going in. It reminded me of more like Watchmen, and I know you didn't watch Watchmen on HBO, but it really focused a lot on the history of race in America, and which is a very timely subject right now with the Black Lives Matter protests going on. And so Watchmen came out and had it was a great show on its own, but it had a lot of that a lot of that racial element to it, and the history is spanned several decades in terms of the content of the show. So it really got into going back to, I don't know, the 60s or 50s even. So that was really good. And The Boys talked about for season 2 that they're going to be kind of digging into some of that as well, some of those racist issues, because I know in the past I mentioned that The Boys was more kind of focused on issues of kind of capitalism and corporate America, and they didn't really touch too much in terms of any kind of like racial inequality and that kind of stuff. But it sounds like they might get into a little more the social issues for season 2, which could be interesting. And they're already renewed for season 3.
Oh, so what is The Boys about? And is it a period piece, or is it set? What time period is
Well,
it set in?
it's modern. It's a modern one. It's a superhero movie it's very what would be the word, like kind of wry, I guess, and cutting kind of satire on modern society. It's basically like the main premise, I guess, is that there's a corporation which owns the superheroes. It's like the Justice League, basically, but it's a corporation. So imagine if like Amazon owned and sponsored Justice League and all these superheroes in the Justice League. In this case, I think they're called like the Seven, or there's seven of them. I forget what their names are, but there's like seven, and they are the team, the big team. And I think there are other minor superheroes here and there or whatever, but the big franchise one, the big Justice League, that's backed by like basically a major corporation, is this one. And it's sort of kind of balancing the idea of superheroes as an owned product, which is very much, like Disney, how they do merchandising and everything, but they're also real superheroes. But whenever there's that profit incentive to it, they're more than just crime fighters. They're doing it for their brand, and they need to look good fighting crime, and they need to sell merchandise ultimately. And then, of course, the corporation itself, too, when they have people with superpowers, it gives them some undue influence in terms of government and that kind of thing. So it's really good. It's pretty gritty, pretty violent, but I like it. It's really good commentary on modern society.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I'll have to check it out. It's on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, definitely. The Boys and Watchmen as well. Those are both worth watching. The other panel that I thought was pretty cool, and it was funny because we had mentioned this on a podcast. There was a panel that was just all about Charlize Theron. Oh, and really? It was basically just her being interviewed about her career in film. I think it was even titled something like something badass. It was just about her basically being a badass in action films, and which was interesting because I think she made some interesting points as a female lead. She talked about how hard it was that she did these action films, and that the first one she did, or maybe one of the first ones, was that Aeon Flux, which I had mentioned in a previous podcast. I think in that one I accidentally said Scarlett Johansson though instead of Charlize Theron. Oh. But yeah, this was that movie that like it was a complete flop. Nobody had seen it, and she admitted to that. She said, that she made this movie. It was an action film starring with a female lead, and and it didn't do well, and it failed. And so she just thought like that was it. That was her chance. She'd never get a chance again. That people assume that it's not going to work out because people don't want a female action hero. But she kept at it, and then of course went on to do Mad Max Fury Road, and the latest one that she has on Netflix, The Old Guard. So she's kind of pursued these roles of not your stereotypical leading female roles. It's more action-packed roles. And now in this time period, I think she says that it's a lot easier. It's gotten easier, but she's sort of lived through that spectrum of it. Starting out when, like we said in the Black Widow episode too, that like at that time, people didn't think a female could lead a superhero franchise. And then of course, maybe at that time it couldn't. The sexism was just there, that people didn't think it was possible, and therefore they didn't go watch these movies when there were movies like Aeon Flux. But slowly over time, people start to see, they're pretty cool, and they're good at this action stuff as well. So and now of course it's like a no-brainer. You do a Captain Marvel or something, and other than maybe a small group of vocal idiots probably who just don't like seeing women in a powerful position, they might speak out, but for the most part nobody cares. Like everyone enjoys it. They go and they have a good time, and it's a good movie.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so that was a good panel, and I watched quite a bit of that one. And I think what was interesting to me too that she had mentioned was how different fighting is for women, and that was an annoyance for her, frustration, that she'd get these stunt choreographers, and they're all used to working with male action leads, because that's the industry. So all the experience is from men, fighting with men, And so the dynamics are different just because of the way the bodies are built differently and the strengths are different. And she said something like, she had some line about how if she punches somebody in the face, her hand, she would break her hand basically, because she's not built like that to do that. Which is not to say that there aren't women that are, but these kind of women like a Charlize Theron in a different body type, it doesn't make sense to give them the stunts that you would give John Cena or something, Mm-hmm. And so for the old guard, and I think some of the more modern stuff that she's done, she has been able to get stunt coordinators that think more practically about that and how a woman would go about fighting. And so that was an interesting thing, because like, especially as a man, like, it's not something you'd think of, but it makes sense. You would want to write not only like the dialogue and the character would be different, but even the fight style would be different.
Oh yeah, I never thought about that, but I guess you're right. It's kind of a whole new ball game.
Yeah.
And I guess as these things kind of become more prevalent, it'll start becoming the norm, and it'll stop being kind of unusual.
Yeah. So that was an interesting conversation, and I like the format of. It was just her. It was about her, and it was she was being interviewed. And another one that I saw was Kevin Smith from the Kevin Smith films. I don't know what you call them. A View Askew, I think he calls it, right? A View Askew averse or something. Yeah, Mallrats and Clerks and all of those. Jay and Silent Bob. Mm-hmm. And I think he probably he's probably a Comic-Con staple. And I bet there's always a panel that's just all about Kevin Smith. And this one was interesting because he wasn't even being interviewed. It was just straight up him talking to the camera, just saying whatever the hell he wanted to say, really. But it was good. It was entertaining. It was informative. It was fun. He has a lot of stuff. Like I'm not a huge Kevin Smith fan. I like his stuff, but I don't follow him closely. But he has a lot going on. He does a lot of podcasts. He said he and his daughter also have a podcast that they do together about veganism, and he had the Jay and Silent Bob reboot a while back that he was talking about. So, and he had some like merchandise from it as well. But I think what's interesting about him is he's just a big fan himself. So like it's fun to just listen to how passionate he is about all of this stuff about filmmaking and everything.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's really cool. That's a pretty cool platform for him to have that opportunity to just kind of reach his fans and kind of be himself. And I think he was the type of person who would really like that. Did you hear about the Joss Whedon panel getting canceled?
I just heard that it was canceled. I didn't hear more beyond that.
Yeah, I don't know all the details, but it seems like a pretty juicy story.
I know he got some abuse allegations or something recently as well, right?
Yeah, Ray Fisher, the guy who plays Cyborg, has been saying some very, very not nice things about him or the way that Joss Whedon acted on set. Yeah. And Ray Fisher just said today, Joss Whedon should sue me if I'm saying anything untrue.
Yeah, so he's daring him to call him out.
Yeah, so it's getting.
So do you think that was related to why it was canceled, or something entirely different?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like after like the fan backlash of Age of Ultron, Joss Whedon quit Twitter and he kind of went in a hole for a little while. He finally came out and then he made Justice League, and now everyone dislikes him again. So
I guess our hopes for a Firefly reboot are finally dashed.
I don't know. That's his baby though, right? He came up with that. Yeah, that's his idea,
and it was
okay.
I guess not really a huge hit, but people today love it, and it was canceled after the first season, but it's become a sensation since. And if Firefly could ever make a comeback, that would be like one of the biggest events in television history, probably. But awesome. It looks increasingly more unlikely. It's already almost impossible, I'm sure, even before Joss Whedon gets canceled.
Wait, so would the original actors have to come back, or is that not necessary?
I don't know. We could do like a whole episode probably on exploring the ramifications of a Firefly reboot. Nathan Fillion was on something that I saw him on, not the Comic-Con thing, but something before fairly recently. And his pitch was basically doing a reboot of Firefly with a completely new cast, sort of like they did with what is that, Battlestar Galactica. So that was like a show back in the, I don't know, 60s, whatever, 70s, something like that, and then they remade it fairly recently with a whole new cast. And so his suggestion was just do that, just start over, take the same universe, fresh new cast, and then they could bring in the old cast just to play like cameos here and there. And so I think that could probably work. Me personally, I would say let's reboot it, but more of a kind of like a Star Wars sequel kind of reboot, where it's still the same universe. Everything that happened in the original Firefly still happened, but like now it's 40 years later. Let's just dig into that universe with entirely new characters, and then the old people who want to show up can still show up and have a role or have a cameo or whatever. But it doesn't have to be about those characters, even though I think for the fans, part of wanting that reboot is really seeing that team back together. But for me, I like what I liked more about it was just that world. Like the characters were amazing too, but I'm sure you could have another group of amazing characters as well. The world building was really what was interesting there.
Yeah. So if you think, if Joss Whedon came back and did that, do you think it would be like a George Lucas situation where, in the 20 years or so since this thing initially aired, fans have kind of taken this and made this their own, and they have their own kind of idea of what's going to happen, and if the original creator came back and did what he wanted to do you think fans would hate it, or do you think fans would love it?
I think people would like it. I think George Lucas and Joss Whedon are very different. I think George Lucas is not a writer. He's not that creative person, and Joss Whedon is. George Lucas is a lot more of the technical person. Like I think his big thing with Star Wars even was was based on the hero's journey, so it was all very kind of laid out for him. And yes, it was big and it was imaginative, and he did some really interesting world building there. But in terms of story, like the prequels were really flat, and I think he just doesn't have that kind of human element to the work that he does that I think is just inherent in Joss Whedon's role. Because he can't. There's nothing you can watch from Joss that doesn't have so much humanity put into it. Like he's always coming out with like these are real characters with real problems, and George Lucas sort of is the opposite, where like he's writing more for like the plot points, I guess, and like the technical achievements and things like that, and sort of the characters and the humanity of it all kind of comes separate, which is why I think the prequels really fell flat, was because Qui-Gon Jinn, who the hell is that? Like you could not write a character synopsis for Qui-Gon Jinn. As awesome as Liam Neeson is as an actor, and how cool this Jedi character could be, ultimately, like he has no personality. There's nothing to him, and that's sort of the problem. Even with Darth Maul, who is the coolest, I guess for some reason, the coolest Star Wars property these days. They seem to be wanting to stuff him in everything, apparently moving forward, and they're gonna probably make him the new the new emperor or something. But beyond him just being a scary dude that kind of modeled after Satan,
looks cool.
There's nothing to him, and that's I think a failing that Joss Whedon doesn't really have. He sort of goes the entire opposite side of it, where there's not too much in terms of he doesn't care so much about like the special effects and all of that. He really cares about the human element. Like you could put Joss Whedon in have him direct or write a play, and you wouldn't need any props or set design or anything, and it would still be compelling. It would be a compelling story just because he's writing these interesting characters.
So then where do you think James Cameron fits on that spectrum, on a spectrum of George Lucas to Joss Whedon? Where is James Cameron?
I think he's a lot closer to George Lucas, certainly.
You think so? Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, because Jack and Rose didn't have personalities either.
Yeah, that's true. Because the thing is, they're making like a whole bunch of more Avatar movies.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering who is still interested in that.
Yeah. Well, we may never find out now with everything getting pushed back, which I guess with some of I don't know why people waited for Comic-Con to make these announcements. I don't know if that was just coincidence or what, but it seemed like Comic-Con coincided with a whole bunch of delayed announcements, which seemed inevitable. But basically, I guess the news there is like no movies are coming out for a year.
Well, I guess all of 2020 movies are getting pushed to 2021 for the most part. There's still there's still a lot on the release calendar. They're kind of looking at Tenet and to make the first move.
Yeah, and Mulan.
Yeah.
But they don't even, at this point, they're not even giving them dates. They used to give them a date, and then after a month goes by, they'll say, okay, well, we'll reschedule for 2 months later. And then it gets closer, and then they'll reschedule a couple weeks. And now they're just saying, you know what, it's postponed. We'll tell you when we know.
Because the thing is, I think Warner Brothers is contemplating whether to release Tenet overseas or in the markets that they can. And then, when it's possible to profitably.
And I think those markets would be pretty sizable, really. Like, I mean, looking at the world map now, I guess the concern is, September's coming around and fall. And so the Northern Hemisphere will be experiencing a rise, I guess, again, as temperatures drop. And I don't know the science there, but I've been told that there's some sort of science behind why viruses spread more in colder weather than in the heat. Or maybe it's the reverse, where like the heat keeps them from spreading as much as they normally would. And so for whatever reason, people are expecting it to have like a second wave in fall. Of course, America, we don't care. We're like, what do you mean second wave? We're not even giving up on this first one. So it's just going to be going on forever in America. But the rest of the world, for the most part, with a few exceptions like Brazil and others, but most places seem like they're kind of got it under control and are at least taking precautions. So you could open up in China, Japan, most of Europe probably.
Yeah, most of Europe.
And that's going to be a considerable size chunk of the box office right there. So it might mean that America ends up pirating it, or you make a deal and just sell it to Disney Plus or Netflix or something for the American market to recoup some of the loss there. But it might be possible.
Well, I guess most blockbusters make about 60 to 70% of their money overseas anyway. So like you could get 50% of your box office with the markets that are open or that will be open next month. So I think that's kind of the calculation that Warner Brothers is making.
Yeah, I think it's just, we're going to wait. And if this second wave hits, then it might be too risky, even in these places where it's a bit safer.
Yeah.
So who knows what'll happen. And I think it's kind of hard. I mean, you need the marketing campaign for the most part behind it. And if you don't have a set date, you can't really do that. So, it's not like you can just decide, hey, you know what, let's drop Mulan this Friday.
Right.
Because then, nobody's going to realize that it's out. So you kind of have to have a date, and then you have to commit that money, and then you have to hope that everything holds out. And, if you spend 2 months marketing the thing, and then a couple weeks before it's due to release, cases start skyrocketing.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, you just wasted all of that marketing budget.
And I've heard that Mulan is going to follow Tenet. Like whatever Tenet decides to do, look for Mulan to open up a couple weekends after. Oh yeah. So the other big news was the Star Wars news that about Taika Waititi. So
yes, that's probably the best news to come out of Comic-Con.
Yeah, I think so too. That's pretty exciting. So we've already known that he's writing a Star Wars movie. But what we didn't know is that that's going to be the next one to come out, which is going to be December 2023, which is a long break between.
And is it going to be one of these, a Star Wars story ones that's kind of a knockoff? Or is it going to somehow come into like a main saga, even though the main saga is sort of wrapped, possibly? But maybe there's some kind of, I feel like Disney wouldn't want to give up the main saga. Right. That's the moneymaker. The kind of one-offs are fine, extras, but they probably want to continue doing some kind of main saga line, even if it is sort of a kind of soft reboot.
Right. So what I've heard is that like the Star Wars stories, those kind of things, those are over. Those are going to be Disney Plus series,
TV shows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then so this is going to be a new trilogy, and like going forward, all the new movies that are going to be coming out are going to be in the timeline between episode 6 and 7. So 7, 8, and 9 happened, and they're like, canon.
Yeah.
But everything else is going to be taking place between those two movies, and they're like in that sweet spot.
So that way you can kind of have the option of forgetting 7, 8, 9 if you want. You can just say like, well, it happened in the far future. We're not there yet.
Exactly.
If you want to believe it happened, whatever. And then by the time it comes around, they'll finally just probably reboot it and rewrite it.
Exactly. So having their cake and eating it too.
Okay, so that's interesting. Now, is this the one that D&D? I forget their actual names. They're referred to as D&D from Game of Thrones. That director duo is that the one that they were up to get?
So I forget what happened with that. If that deal went through or if it fell apart.
So the story is that it fell apart. The story is so. I wish I remember their actual names because it's so weird saying D&D. Mm-hmm. And so these guys, they're the showrunners for Game of Thrones. They're the ones that adapted it from George R. R. Martin's books. Mm-hmm. They got the rights to it. They sold it to HBO as a series. And then, of course, they got an offer to create a Star Wars or to direct a Star Wars movie. And they wanted to do that. And so they basically dropped the ball on Game of Thrones. They just sort of gave up at season 7 and 8. They just said, screw it. But for whatever reason, they didn't want to hand it off to somebody who would, do it right. They still stayed involved. They still ran that show, but it completely sucked. They had it was just the worst writing, the worst story ever, and just absolute trash. And to the point where it almost killed the franchise. There's going to be some prequel shows and some other spinoffs probably, and we'll see, how well they do. But honestly, nobody ever talks about Game of Thrones anymore. It was the biggest thing for 5 years.
Yeah.
And then now it's it never happened. People do not care about Game of Thrones. And it was because of these two guys, because they were going to go off and do a Star Wars movie. And then I had heard that that deal fell through and that a large part of it was Disney didn't like how the reaction to Game of Thrones, basically. I guess they felt concerned that, well, is this how people do? Is this how these guys do a franchise? Because obviously Disney doesn't want to give them their $4 billion franchise they bought and then have them do the same thing they did to Game of Thrones, where maybe they make a great first movie, but they're signed on for a trilogy, and then that third movie they just don't even care, and then it's the worst thing ever and kills their franchise. And given where the franchise is already, I can understand why Disney wouldn't want to take that risk.
Yeah, that's true. They've already had a few too many missteps, and it's so weird how one bad installment can just ruin things in people's minds. Yeah, I'm in that camp that's okay, move on, forget it, and just keep going, and eventually make.
I think
up
it's a bit easier with movies because with movies, how whatever you feel about the new trilogy of Star Wars, there's always you can always watch one of the movies and maybe one of them you enjoyed more than the others. But I think with a TV show, it's just kind of naturally more of an ongoing story and not meant to be a standalone thing. And so with Game of Thrones, you come into it and you invest 5 years of your life into this, and then the next season is kind of shaky, and then you keep going and you're like, well, but I want to see where the story goes. And then ultimately the story goes nowhere. And it's just the most pointless thing you've ever seen. And then it's well, then what was all of this for? It was more of a journey, So I think with Star Wars, there's some of that to it probably because, certainly the last Star Wars movie was all over the place. But, it doesn't necessarily destroy any of the ones before it. You can still watch the original trilogy and enjoy it for what it is. You can watch some of the prequel movies. I like Revenge of the Sith, and I'll probably always like Revenge of the Sith. And so I go and watch that. It doesn't destroy it. And even the new ones, I could probably watch one of them. I don't remember which one I enjoyed, but there are parts of them that were fine. So I don't think it really has the same effect on movies probably quite as much as it does on TV shows. But it's a great choice, I think, Disney picking Taika Waititi for this, and hopefully they really let him run the show, give him a trilogy, let him see it through beginning to end, and I think they'll have something amazing. What'll be a problem is if they try to, micromanage that and they give him the trilogy. He does one movie and then they say, well, for the second movie, we focus grouped and we think it'll make more sense if, this new up and comer directs it, and then put him in charge. And then, then that's when you get into this kind of Star Wars situation of, no clear vision for the 3 films.
Right.
You really need to just put it all in his hands, make sure that he's committed to doing a trilogy, and then just step back and let him do his thing.
Yeah, because he's done like such a great job with like Thor Ragnarok and kind of setting the tone and the of that kind of like outer space kind of wacky.
That's a really great, it'll be a great fit. Like Thor Ragnarok is exactly the kind of feeling you need for Star Wars probably as well.
Yeah. Is it a little bit like James Gunn, except Taika Waititi's a little bit more family friendly? Like James Gunn always wants to be a little bit more edgy, even though he is kind of reined in. He has those desires. And,
Taika Waititi has never made a bad movie.
Really?
You can watch any of his movies. They're all amazing.
I've only seen 2 of them. I've seen, obviously, Ragnarok, and I saw Jojo Rabbit.
Oh, yeah. Jojo Rabbit is one of my favorites. I think my favorite, though, of his would probably be The Hunt for the Wilder People.
Oh, okay. That's the one that put him on the map.
Yeah, that one really, I think, took off, and kind of like overseas as well, and was huge. I guess not huge like everyone knows about it, but it was more of a critical hit. So that really was what made him shine.
What's that one about?
The Hunt for the Wilder People.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. You just have to watch it. If you're familiar with Taika Waititi, like it's hard to summarize anything of like, what's it about? Because like Jojo Rabbit, what's it about? You can say, it's about this little Nazi boy who's who comes to find out that he has a secret Jewish girl living in his house. But there's it's so much more than that, like it's somehow he manages to create movies that are so much more than the literal story being told.
Oh, that's a good point.
But the literal story of the Wilder People is basically this boy is adopted by an elderly couple. I guess because his parents had died or something, and maybe they were lost relatives or, some kind of distant relatives or something like that. Or maybe they were just adopted outright. I forget how. But he comes to live with this elderly couple. And then immediately the woman dies, like basically the next day. And she was the one that actually wanted the boy. And so it's just him being stuck now with this old man, this kind of Harrison Ford kind of old man of, grumpy type, played by Sam Neill of Jurassic Park.
Okay.
It's just sort of kind of their relationship, and they go off into the wilderness and kind of an adventure ensues, I guess. But it's hilarious and just very heartwarming too. Really, really great film.
Oh yeah. Oh, cool. I'll check it out. Now it's a great time to catch up on movies like those.
Yeah. I'm sure there's probably at least one Taika Waititi film I haven't seen, so I need to check the list and make sure I finish it. But I've seen most of his films, and every one of them has been amazing. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to his Star Wars trilogy.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome. And then they also announced a Donald Glover Lando series, like a Disney Plus series. Coming out of
I heard that. I didn't realize that came out of Comic-Con, but I had seen the headlines around that, because he didn't do anything right at Comic-Con.
I don't think there was a panel. There was just the announcement on Thursday and the first day.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I was just thinking the other day that I was wondering if his character's middle name would be Lakes. I think it would be funny if his name was Lando Lakes Calrissian. I don't know why I thought that, but something about whenever that news came out, that was for whatever reason, that was my first thought was, if they're going to do a origin story, they should give him a middle name, and it should be Lakes.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Could be good product placement as well.
Yeah, right.
They could probably get the entire movie funded for that.
Yeah, he could be their new spokesperson.
Yeah. So what about the comic stuff? Obviously Comic-Con, even though it's probably shifted more towards movies and TV shows, Comic-Con is still about comics. Did you catch any of the comic stuff? Anything as a comic fan that was intriguing to you?
I didn't actually. I missed that. part of it. But yeah, I like it when these things actually focus on comics. Every convention I've been to, that's been the area that I've been most interested in.
Yeah. Do you like the behind the scenes kind of stuff where it's more like learning about how to create comics? They have a lot of panels like that usually, writing for comics, drawing comics, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that stuff is cool. And then also being able to like meet the people who are, coming up with this stuff, and like being able to see them as like human beings. It's really cool. Mm-hmm.
I did catch one that was from DC, I guess. It was just a kind of a DC Comics panel. And, I don't really know anything about comics, so I'm not sure. But it did sound really cool. They were talking about the Joker War, which I guess is a storyline that's coming down the pipe from DC. And the way they framed it sounded really amazing, because they basically said, like, this is the last time that Batman and the Joker are going to go head to head. Oh, that, something's going to happen. This is it, the ultimate battle.
Really?
And the way they framed it, but it's comics, so I imagine, this happens all the time. Batman dies, he's reborn, Superman's killed, he comes back, whatever, or they kill off the Joker and there's a new Joker.
Right.
So, you got to take it with a grain of salt, I guess. But still, it sounded like a very, very cool premise, at least. And I don't, I haven't followed it, but from what I gathered too, if in the kind of recent history of the Batman comics, Robin's character has been like brain wiped and taken over by the Joker or something.
Okay.
Do you know anything about that?
No, I haven't heard about that actually.
Yeah, because I had seen it in reference. I was watching like a YouTube video that was going through some of the Batman movies stuff, and I think it was maybe on Suicide Squad. They had like the Bat Cave, and they had like a scene of the Bat Cave or something, and the Bat suit was there, and it was like shot up, and it had like Joker had graffitied it or something, and the guy in the YouTube video was pointing out all these like references to some comic book storyline in which this happened, where basically Dick Grayson, I think is his name, who is Robin, something about how he's, I don't know, he has his, for some reason he forgets who he is, or he's in a coma or something like that, and then they tell him when he wakes up, they tell him he's the Joker, basically like trick him into becoming the Joker, something like that. I probably have some of the details wrong, but it sounded really cool anyway, this idea, and I don't know if that's plays into the Joker War at all, but it kind of makes me wish that I was into comic books, because I'd like to know the story there, but I don't know, something about looking at pictures and reading it just doesn't do it for me. If they could make a movie of it, though, I'll watch it.
Did you ever watch Batman Beyond? This was on like 20 years ago, because there was a movie based on that. Like
this is the animation, right?
Yeah. So there was a movie called Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker, and it was straight to VHS, and but it kind of has a very similar storyline to what you're saying. So if that's
I don't know. One of these days, I'll have to give the cartoons a try, and maybe we can do an episode about that. Because I other than watching cartoons when I was a kid, like watching whatever kind of series might have been on. But I know like today, there are movies, feature length animations coming out for Batman and these other comic characters that are really popular with like mainstream adult audiences. And I don't watch a lot of animated stuff in general. But I could maybe give it a try sometime, and then we could talk about it.
Okay, yeah. I haven't seen a lot of the newer ones. The last one I saw was Batman Under the Red Hood, which was actually very good. I recommend that one. But I haven't seen anything from like the last 5 years probably. But a lot of them are like direct page for page adaptations of like popular storylines, like The Killing Joke came out I think last year or the year before. And so that's like a direct adaptation.
I heard a lot about that one. That was really popular.
Yeah, it got a lot of attention for like some scandalous scenes within it. So it got a lot of media attention.
So overall, then, what's your take on Comic-Con at home? How do you feel it went? Do you like the virtual aspect to it at all, or you can't wait to get back to to the real Comic-Con next year, hopefully.
I mean, definitely can't wait for the real deal. But I think they did their best. I think that they were kind of let down by the fact that, the major players like DC, Marvel didn't show up.
Yeah.
And I think that they didn't show up because they didn't really have much to talk about, or they didn't have like concrete release dates for anything.
Yeah.
So they didn't really have much to share, so it didn't really make sense for them to be there.
Yeah, and I said too that they could have done more in terms of like, since it was produced before, pre-recorded, they could have done some better production value things and prepared some for that.
Yeah.
But I guess you can't really fault them because they're not making money right now anyway. Like it's easy to throw an in-person event when you're going to have ticket sales that are going to bring in millions of dollars. So then sure, you can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest and set that up. But now, like, they would have to hire a camera crew. They'd have to hire these editors, and they probably already did hire quite a bit and spend quite a bit of money just to produce what they did. And really, they probably don't have hardly any money coming in for this because I'm not sure how they would merchandise it other than some of the, actual merchandise tie-ins that they had where there's, some licensing of the Comic-Con brand probably.
Yeah, that's true.
But, there's no ticket sales here. And it was nice that, nothing was behind a paywall. They could have easily, charged people to actually view these panels.
Right.
And I'm surprised they didn't. Like, I would have imagined they'd have, like, maybe a low price, like they could say like $20 for a pass, and then it would give you exclusive access and maybe even behind the scenes stuff and Q&A events and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it would have been a big investment on their end.
I think a big part of it was just Comic-Con trying to stay relevant. They didn't want to skip an entire year, so this is like the best that they could do. Yeah,
and maybe, I don't know, maybe they'll put some ads on I have an ad blocker, so I don't know if they had ads running on the YouTube videos or not. One thing that was funny, so since it was pre-recorded, fortunately there were no real technical issues to deal with, and of course that's if you did a live event, it would be almost impossible to not have technical issues, especially given how many panels and shows they were running.
Right.
But one thing that was funny was I started the Star Trek panel, and it was immediately blocked for copyright infringement. Probably, from Paramount, which is ironic because the whole point of the panel is to promote their property.
Yeah,
and,
why would they?
It's just because it's just an automatic flag, probably because they had a clip from a Star Trek episode or something like that. Fortunately, it got resolved, and apparently you can watch the episode now. But it was funny because right there when it was due to go live, I tuned in and tried to watch it, and I couldn't.
Yeah. But I mean, for some of these, it feels weird that they're charging you to view their promotional material, Yeah. It's like, here, let me charge you to watch this ad. So.
Yeah. So New York Comic-Con, is that, have you heard anything about that? Are they going to do anything?
I have not heard anything, no. But I hear
that's usually in October, right?
Yeah, usually early October.
All right. Well, it'd be interesting, I guess, to wait and see if New York chooses to do anything. Maybe if the numbers hold strong in New York, they could actually do some kind of in-person thing. But I think they also have the benefit of learning from San Diego Comic-Con's virtual one, and if they choose to do something, they can maybe try doing it a bit differently. Probably, given that it's more of a for-profit organization, which I think we talked about a bit on the previous episode. I don't see them doing something for free like San Diego did.
Oh yeah, that's true. And then there's also DC Fandom coming up in a couple of weeks. Which will
and that one should be a good one.
Yeah, that's gonna, because they've invested some money into that, like with the user interface and just like the concept of it all. So they'll probably have a lot of big surprises for that. Yeah, so we'll definitely tune into that and live tweet it. So if anyone who wants to join us can join us on Twitter at twitter.com/WUTR podcast and tune in along with us watching this DC Fandom. Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
And if something does happen for New York Comic Con, I guess we'll talk about that too.
For sure.
But we'll see. And then hopefully one of these days Mulan will come out and we can finally do our Mulan episode.
Yeah, one of these days.